The auditorium buzzed with excitement. Parents held cameras high, ready to capture their children's special moment. I smoothed down my graduation gown and scanned the crowd for the one face I desperately wanted to see. Row after row of proud families filled the seats. But there was one chair, third row left side, that remained empty. My father's chair. My hands trembled as I clutched my diploma folder. All around me, graduates hugged their families, posed for photos, and celebrated. The dean called my name, Claire Weston, Master of Business Administration, summa cum laude. I walked across that stage alone. The applause felt hollow. I had worked 2 jobs for 3 years, attended night classes, sacrificed weekends and holidays. All I wanted was for him to be there. When I returned to my seat, my phone buzzed. A text from Dad. Didn't see the point in coming. You've wasted enough time already. I stared at those words until they blurred. The ceremony continued around me, but I heard nothing. 3 years of sacrifice, and this was his response. My best friend Amanda squeezed my shoulder. Claire, you okay? I nodded, unable to speak. After the ceremony, classmates surrounded me with congratulations. Your mother would be so proud, Professor Harris said, shaking my hand. Mom had died when I was 12. She was the one who believed in education, who told me I could be anything. I forced a smile through every handshake, every photo. But inside, something had broken, or maybe something had finally snapped into place. Amanda pulled me aside. Forget him. You did this. She was right. I had done this. Alone. As we walked to the parking lot, she mentioned casually, Hey, did you hear? There's an executive position opening at Davidson Industries. You should apply. That night I sat in my tiny apartment staring at my diploma. Master of Business Administration. The words felt both triumphant and empty. My mind drifted back to my childhood. Dad, Rick Weston, had always been a hard man. He worked as a foreman at Hartley Manufacturing, a job he was immensely proud of. Real work, he called it. When I was 16 and mentioned wanting to go to college, he laughed. Books don't pay bills, Claire. You'll end up waiting tables anyway. When Mom died, his bitterness grew worse. He saw my dreams as a betrayal of his values. After high school, I asked for help with tuition. You want to waste money on college? Figure it out yourself. You'll just quit like everything else. So I did figure it out. Student loans, night shifts at a diner, weekend data entry jobs. I proved him wrong with every passing semester. My phone rang, snapping me back to the present. Miss Weston? This is Patricia from Davidson Industries. We'd like to schedule an interview for the Director of Operations position. 2 days after graduation, Dad showed up at my apartment. No apology, no acknowledgement of missing my ceremony. He walked in like nothing had happened. Your brother just got promoted to shift lead at the plant, he announced proudly. 23 years old and already moving up. That's the Weston work ethic. I poured him coffee, biting my tongue. My younger brother, Kyle, was a good kid, but Dad's favoritism had always been obvious. Kyle worked with his hands. That made sense to Dad. I worked with my mind. That made me suspicious. How's the job search going? Dad asked, stirring his coffee. Any fancy corporations want to hire you yet? His tone dripped with sarcasm. Actually, I have an interview this week. Director level. He snorted. Director? You've got 2 years of management experience. Don't get your hopes up. As he stood to leave, he paused at the door. Oh, things aren't great at the plant. They're talking about downsizing, budget cuts, safety complaints, the usual corporate nonsense. My stomach tightened. That sounds serious. He waved dismissively. We'll be fine. Hartley Manufacturing has been around for 40 years. The interview at Davidson Industries went better than I imagined. I met with 3 executives who seemed genuinely impressed by my background. You put yourself through school while maintaining a 3.9 GPA? The CEO, Mrs. Holloway, asked. That's the kind of determination we need here. 4 days later, I received the offer letter. Director of Operations, reporting directly to the VP. The salary was more than I had dared to hope for. But it was the company name at the bottom that made my breath catch. Davidson Industries, Regional Manufacturing Division. We were one of the largest manufacturing firms in the state. We worked with dozens of suppliers and plants, including, I realized with a jolt, Hartley Manufacturing, my father's plant. I accepted the position immediately. My first day was overwhelming. I had an office with windows, an assistant named Brenda, and access to files I had only dreamed about studying in business school. During my second week, I was assigned my first major project, reviewing vendor partnerships and supplier compliance. Brenda handed me a thick folder. Start with these. Some have been flagged for review. I opened the file. Third on the list, Hartley Manufacturing. I spent the weekend reviewing every document related to Hartley Manufacturing. What I found made my stomach turn. Safety violations dating back 5 years. Failed inspections. Financial mismanagement. Delayed shipments. Every report bore the same signature at the bottom. Rick Weston, production foreman. My father had been signing off on violations for years. No wonder the plant was struggling. They were barely meeting industry standards. One report detailed a workplace accident that had been improperly documented. Another showed equipment maintenance that had been skipped to save money. These weren't small mistakes. These were serious problems that put workers at risk and the company's reputation in jeopardy. Monday morning, I presented my findings to Mrs. Holloway. She studied the reports carefully. This is worse than I thought. Claire, I'm putting you in charge of the full review. If Hartley can't meet our standards within 90 days, we'll have to terminate the contract. My mouth went dry. Understood. She looked at me carefully. This won't be easy, but I trust your judgment. As I left her office, my phone rang. Dad? Claire, I might need to start looking for work elsewhere. Any chance your company is hiring? I stared at my phone, unable to believe the timing. What happened? I asked carefully. Nothing's set in stone, he grumbled. But word is Hartley might lose some major contracts. Davidson Industries is reviewing us. Bunch of corporate types who don't understand real manufacturing. I closed my eyes. That sounds tough, Dad. Yeah, well, if it goes south, I'll need a backup plan. You're at Davidson now, right? Know anyone in hiring? The irony was suffocating. I can check, I said quietly. Over the next 2 weeks, I threw myself into the Hartley review. Every file confirmed what I already knew. The plant was failing, and much of it was due to poor management. My father's signature was on dozens of problematic reports. I wanted to be angry, but mostly I felt sad. He had spent years telling me I wasn't good enough, that I didn't understand the real world. Meanwhile, he had been cutting corners and ignoring safety protocols. The ethical dilemma kept me awake at night. This was my father's livelihood, but it was also my responsibility to my company and to the workers whose safety he had compromised. Mrs. Holloway called me into her office. Claire, I need your final recommendation on Hartley Manufacturing by the end of the week. Friday afternoon, Brenda knocked on my office door. Claire, there's something you should see. She handed me a job application. This came through HR this morning. The applicant listed Davidson Industries as his top choice. I looked down at the name, Richard Rick Weston. Position applied for, floor supervisor. My hands shook slightly. Dad had actually applied to work here, at my company, the company that was about to cut ties with his current employer, largely because of his own negligence. What should I do with this? Brenda asked carefully. I took a deep breath. He's qualified for an interview. Schedule him. Brenda's eyes widened. Are you sure? I saw the last name and thought maybe. It's fine, I interrupted. We'll handle it professionally. That weekend, I barely slept. Part of me wanted to recuse myself from his interview. It would be the ethical thing to do. But another part of me, the part that still remembered his text message on graduation day, wanted to face him. I wanted him to see what I had become. Monday morning, I reviewed the interview schedule. Rick Weston, Thursday, 2 p.m. I would be on the panel. Schedule him in, I had told Brenda. Now I had to follow through. The interview list sat on my desk all week, his name in bold letters, Rick Weston. Every time I looked at it, my heart raced. I knew I should remove myself from the panel. Any HR manual would say I had a conflict of interest, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I'll be professional, I told myself in the mirror Thursday morning. This is just business. My colleague, Tom, would lead the interview. I would observe and ask follow-up questions, standard procedure. At lunch, Tom mentioned, we've got a few interesting candidates this afternoon. One guy's been in manufacturing for 30 years, lots of experience. I nodded, pushing food around my plate. Experience is good, but we also need to assess judgment and ethical standards. Tom agreed. Absolutely, especially after the Hartley situation. I spent the afternoon rehearsing what I would say if Dad recognized me in the interview. Would I be cold? Professional? Would I mention graduation? The audit reports? At 1:55 p.m., I stood outside the interview room. Through the glass, I could see Dad arriving. He wore a wrinkled suit I recognized from family funerals. He clutched his resume like a lifeline. He looked older than I remembered, smaller, somehow, in view. Basic questions about experience and qualifications. I watched from my seat, silent. Then Tom said, "And Claire, our director of operations, will continue." I stood. Dad looked up and froze. "Claire?" The room fell completely silent. Dad's face went pale. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Tom looked between us, confused. I kept my expression neutral, professional. "Mr. Weston," I said evenly, "we'll continue with the interview." My voice didn't shake. Years of controlling my emotions around him had taught me that much. You're the director?" he stammered. Sweat formed on his temple. "I am." I sat down, pulling out my notepad. "Please tell us about your leadership philosophy." He couldn't answer. He just stared at me, processing. Tom shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Weston, are you all right?" Dad shook his head slightly, as if waking from a dream. "I'm sorry. I didn't expect." "This is a professional interview," I said calmly. "Your relationship to me isn't relevant to your qualifications." That seemed to ground him. He straightened in his chair, trying to regain composure. "My leadership philosophy is simple. Hard work, no excuses, results matter." I wrote that down. "Can you give an example of a time when you had to make a difficult ethical decision?" His eyes narrowed slightly. He knew I was testing him. "In manufacturing, you make tough calls every day. Balance safety with productivity, costs with quality." "That's vague," I said. "Can you be specific?" He couldn't. Or wouldn't. Tom asked several more questions. Dad's answers were rehearsed, generic. He leaned heavily on his years of experience, but provided few concrete examples of actual leadership. When Tom asked about problem solving, Dad launched into a story about fixing a machine malfunction. "I don't wait for permission," he said proudly. "I see a problem, I fix it." I saw my opening. What about problems that require more than a quick fix? Long-term issues with processes or safety? He hesitated. "Well, sometimes you have to work within the system." "Even when the system is broken?" He shifted in his seat. "You do the best you can." I pulled out a folder. The Hartley Manufacturing Audit Reports. "Mr. Weston, you've been with Hartley Manufacturing for nearly 3 decades. Can you explain why your plant has accumulated 17 safety violations in the past 5 years?" The color drained from his face. Tom looked at me sharply, surprised by the directness. "Those violations were..." Dad started. "Those were signed off by you," I said, sliding a report across the table. "This signature is yours, correct?" He stared at the paper. "Circumstances were complicated. Budget constraints, pressure from above." "So you compromised safety because of pressure?" His jaw clenched. "You don't understand how the real world works, Claire." The use of my first name hung in the air like a grenade. "This interview maintains professional boundaries, Mr. Weston," I said coldly. "Please address me appropriately." Tom tried to redirect the interview, asking about Dad's experience with team management. But the damage was done. Dad's answers grew increasingly defensive. "Look," he finally said, frustration bleeding through. "I've worked in manufacturing longer than most people in this building have been alive. I know what matters. Real work, real results." "Real work that endangers employees?" I asked. "Real results that include failed inspections and terminated contracts?" His face flushed red. "You can't be serious right now." "I'm completely serious. We're evaluating your qualifications for a supervisor position. Your track record is part of that evaluation." He leaned forward, his voice dropping. "Is this what you wanted? Your moment of power?" Tom stood up. "Mr. Weston, I think we need to take a break." "No," I said firmly. "We're almost finished." I pulled out another document. This is a workplace accident report from 2 years ago. An employee was injured due to faulty equipment. The equipment had failed inspection 3 times, but continued operation was authorized by you. Dad's hands balled into fists. "That accident was investigated. I was cleared." "You were cleared because Hartley didn't want to admit liability, but the equipment should have been replaced months earlier." He stood abruptly. "You think you're better than me, don't you?" "I think," I said calmly, "that leadership requires accountability, something you've consistently avoided." The room crackled with tension. Tom looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Dad stood there, breathing heavily, his face red with anger and humiliation. "You know what your problem is?" he said, pointing at me. "You got that fancy degree, and now you think you're above everyone. Above me." I remained seated, my hands folded on the table. "This isn't about my degree, Mr. Weston. It's about your professional record." "Professional record?" He laughed bitterly. "I've been working since before you were born. I've run production lines, managed crews, kept that plant running through recessions and market crashes." "What have you done? 2 years in an office?" "I've reviewed 17 documented safety violations that you signed off on," I said quietly. "I've read reports of near misses and actual injuries that could have been prevented. I've seen evidence of cost-cutting measures that put people at risk." He slammed his hand on the table. "You don't know anything about the pressure I was under, the quotas, the deadlines, the impossible standards." "Then maybe," I said, meeting his eyes, "you should have spoken up instead of compromising safety." Tom finally intervened. "Mr. Weston, I think this interview has run its course." Dad's voice turned ugly. "You're ungrateful. After everything I taught you." "You taught me that hard work matters," I interrupted. "That was valuable. But you also taught me what not to become." His face twisted. "You'll regret this, Claire. Mark my words." He grabbed his folder and stormed toward the door. Before leaving, he turned back one last time. "You think you've won something here? You're just bitter because I didn't show up to your little ceremony." The words hit harder than I expected, but I kept my face blank. "This interview is over," I said softly. The door slammed behind him. The sound echoed in the small room. Tom let out a long breath. "Claire?" I had no idea. "It's fine," I said, gathering the papers with steady hands. "His relationship to me doesn't change the facts in these reports." "Still, that was..." Tom shook his head. "That took incredible composure." I stood, smoothing my skirt. "He's not getting the position." "Obviously not," Tom agreed. "But are you okay?" That was intense. I wasn't sure how to answer that. My hands were steady, my voice had remained calm throughout, but inside I felt like I'd run a marathon. "I need some air," I said finally. I took the stairs to the roof access, a quiet space where employees sometimes ate lunch. The afternoon sun was bright, almost blinding. I stood at the railing, letting the breeze cool my burning cheeks. I had maintained control during the interview, but now alone the emotion threatened to overwhelm me. Not sadness, not even anger anymore. Just exhaustion. Footsteps behind me. "Claire?" Mrs. Holloway's voice. I turned. She stood a few feet away, her expression unreadable. "Tom told me what happened," she said. "May I?" Mrs. Holloway joined me at the railing. We stood in silence for a moment, watching traffic move far below. "That was your father," she said. Not a question. "Yes." "Tom said you handled it with remarkable professionalism." I let out a shaky breath. I tried to keep it professional. "I know I should have recused myself." "You did exactly what you should have done," she interrupted. "You evaluated a candidate based on documented evidence. The fact that you maintained composure under those circumstances shows exceptional leadership." I turned to face her. He was right about one thing. I didn't tell you about the connection because I wanted to handle the interview myself. Mrs. Holloway nodded slowly. "I suspected as much when I saw the application. I also reviewed the files you've been working on." She pulled out her phone, showing me an email. "This is from our legal team. Based on your audit, we're terminating our contract with Hartley Manufacturing. It's the right decision, but I know it affects your father directly." My throat tightened. "I understand. The question is," she continued, "can you live with that decision?" I thought about Mom, about her belief in doing the right thing, about the workers at Hartley who deserved safe conditions, about my own integrity. "Yes," I said firmly, "I can." Mrs. Holloway smiled. "Good, because I'm promoting you to Vice President of Operations. You've earned it." The promotion was announced the following Monday. Vice President of Operations at 35 years old. My office moved to the executive floor. The increase in responsibility was daunting, but I felt ready. Amanda took me out to celebrate that night. "VP, Claire, this is incredible," she said, raising her wine glass. "Your mom would be so proud." "I hope so," I said. "It's been quite a week." I told her about the interview with Dad. She listened with wide eyes. "He actually said that? About your graduation?" "He did." What a piece of work. She shook her head. But you handled it perfectly. You didn't let emotion cloud your judgment. I wasn't sure that was entirely true. Emotion had been there, simmering beneath every question I asked, but I had channeled it into professionalism. The next morning, news broke that Hartley Manufacturing was shutting down. The contract termination had been the final blow to an already struggling operation. 80 employees would lose their jobs, including my father. I tried to feel sorry for him, but mostly I felt sorry for the workers who had trusted him to keep them safe. My assistant buzzed. Claire, you have a call on line 2. It's your brother. I picked up. Kyle? Claire, what the hell did you do? His voice was angry, scared. Dad just got laid off. They're closing the whole plant. I know. I'm sorry. Sorry? You work for Davidson. Couldn't you have done something? Kyle's anger poured through the phone. I let him vent. Dad said you were on the team that killed the contract. Is that true? Yes. And you didn't think to warn him? To give him a chance? Kyle, the plant had 17 safety violations. People could have been seriously hurt. People are seriously hurt now. Dad's 58 years old. Who's going to hire him? I closed my eyes. I understand this is difficult. No, you don't understand, Kyle shouted. You got your fancy degree and your big office, and now you're too good for the rest of us. Dad was right about you. The line went dead. I sat there staring at the phone. Part of me wanted to call Kyle back to explain everything, but I knew he wouldn't listen. Not now. Not while he was angry and scared for Dad. 3 weeks passed. I buried myself in work, trying not to think about Dad or Kyle or the empty chair at my graduation. Then one afternoon, Brenda knocked softly. Claire, someone's here to see you. No appointment. She looked uncomfortable. He says it's personal. Who is it? Rick Weston. My stomach dropped. Send him in. Dad walked into my office slowly. He looked different, older, more worn. His shoulders slumped in a way I'd never seen before. Claire. His voice was quiet. I just need a job, anything. I can start at entry level, I don't care. He stood in front of my desk like a supplicant. Please, I'll do whatever it takes. I gestured to a chair. Sit down, Dad. He sat, his hands folded in his lap. The proud foreman who had spent my whole life telling me I wasn't good enough was now begging me for help. I've been to 12 companies, he said. Nobody's hiring. I'm 58, and all anyone sees is the Hartley shutdown. You understand why Hartley was shut down? I asked carefully. He nodded slowly. I saw the final report, the safety violations, the mismanagement. He trailed off. I didn't realize how bad it had gotten. You signed off on those reports. I know. His voice cracked slightly. I was trying to keep the plant running. The pressure from management, the quotas, I made bad calls. It was the closest thing to an admission of guilt I'd ever heard from him. Those bad calls affected real people, people with families. I know, he repeated. I've had a lot of time to think about that. We sat in silence. I thought about all the times he had dismissed my dreams, belittled my education, refused to support me. I thought about the empty chair at graduation, but I also thought about Mom, about what she would want me to do. I can't give you a job here, I said finally. It would be inappropriate given our history and your record. His face fell. I understand. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a folder. But I can give you this. I handed it to him. What is it? A list of retraining programs for experienced workers. Manufacturing is changing. These programs teach new skills, new safety standards, modern management techniques. He opened the folder, scanning the pages. Retraining? At my age? Dad looked up from the folder, his expression somewhere between hopeful and humiliated. You think I need to go back to school? I think the industry has changed, and you need to change with it. I said, these programs are designed for experienced workers who want to stay relevant. He set the folder on my desk. You're saying I'm obsolete. I'm saying you have a choice. You can stay stuck in the past, blaming everyone else for your situation, or you can adapt. His jaw tightened. You think you're above me, don't you? You got your degree and now you get to lecture me about learning? The old anger flared in his eyes. This is charity, Claire. You're throwing me scraps. I stood up, my patience finally wearing thin. No, Dad, charity would be giving you a job you haven't earned. This is respect. Respecting you enough to believe you can still learn and grow. Respect? He stood too. You humiliated me in that interview. You brought up every mistake, every violation. I treated you like any other candidate, I interrupted. You failed that interview on your own merits, or lack thereof. He grabbed the folder. I don't need your help. Then why are you here? I asked quietly. He stood there, the folder clutched in his hand, pride and desperation warring on his face. I needed you to see what you've done, he said finally. I needed you to know that your revenge came at a price. This isn't revenge, I said. It never was. This is consequence. You spent years cutting corners, ignoring safety, and dismissing anyone who questioned you. The plant closure was inevitable. He walked to the door, paused. You know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe I am stuck in the past. He looked back at me, but at least I remember when family meant something. The door closed behind him. I thought that would be the last I'd hear from Dad. He had stormed out, and I assumed his pride would keep him away permanently. Kyle stopped returning my calls. Amanda told me to give them time, that eventually they'd see I had done the right thing. I tried to focus on work. My new role as VP kept me busy with projects and decisions that affected hundreds of employees. I told myself I had made the right choices. That integrity mattered more than family approval. But late at night, alone in my apartment, I wondered if there was a difference between justice and cruelty. Had I been too harsh? Should I have found a way to help Dad while maintaining my principles? 3 months passed. Then one afternoon, a letter arrived. Plain envelope, no return address. Inside was a single page of lined notebook paper. The handwriting was Dad's. Claire, I enrolled in the Industrial Management program at County Technical College. It's harder than I expected, learning about all the regulations I should have been following these years. Found a small maintenance job at a warehouse. Steady pay, modest work. It's humbling. But I'm starting to understand some things I didn't before. The list you gave me, I kept it. Thank you for that. I don't expect forgiveness, just wanted you to know I'm trying. I read the letter 3 times, then I folded it carefully and placed it in my desk drawer. I didn't respond immediately, but I whispered to the empty office, maybe this is what healing looks like. 4 more months passed. Spring turned to summer. I was preparing for Davidson Industries' annual shareholder meeting when Brenda buzzed. Claire, you have a visitor. No appointment, but he says it's important. Who? Rick Weston. My heart jumped. Send him in. Dad entered, and I almost didn't recognize him. He wore clean work clothes and carried himself differently. Less swagger, more quiet confidence. I saw your company's billboard downtown, he said. Vice President of Operations, new expansion project in 3 counties. He paused. You did good, kid. The compliment, simple as it was, stunned me. Thank you. I won't take much of your time, he continued. I just wanted you to know I finished the program, got certified in industrial safety management. The warehouse promoted me to safety coordinator. Dad, that's wonderful. He nodded. It's different work than I'm used to. Lot of paperwork, lot of training sessions, but it matters. I'm making sure people go home safe every night. We stood in awkward silence. Years of hurt and resentment stood between us like a wall. Why did you come here? I asked finally. I owed you an apology, not just for the interview or missing your graduation, for all of it. His voice was steady. For every time I told you your dreams were stupid, for every time I made you feel small because you wanted something different than what I understood. Tears pricked my eyes. I wanted you to be proud of me. I know, he said quietly, and I was too stubborn and scared to admit that you were right all along. He hesitated. Would you have dinner with me sometime? I invited Dad to my apartment the following Saturday. I spent the morning cooking Mom's recipe for pot roast, remembering how she used to make it every Sunday. When Dad arrived, he brought flowers. Daisies, my favorite. Your mom always said you loved these, he said, handing them to me. I put them in water while he sat at my small dining table. The apartment was modest, comfortable. I saw him taking it all in, the framed MBA diploma, photos of Amanda and me, a picture of Mom from before she got sick. We ate slowly, making small talk at first. The weather, his job, my latest project at work. Gradually, the conversation deepened. I was jealous, he admitted suddenly, setting down his fork. When you went to college, when you got your MBA, when you became director, I was jealous because you did what I never could. You never wanted to go to college, I said, confused. Not college specifically, but I wanted to be more than I was. When I was young, I had dreams too. Wanted to design manufacturing systems, maybe run my own company. He smiled sadly. But I got scared, told myself I was being practical, that dreams were for people smarter than me. So you resented me for chasing mine? He nodded. It's a terrible thing to admit. You were my daughter, and instead of supporting you, I tried to pull you down to my level. Tears slipped down my cheeks. All I wanted was for you to be proud. I was always proud, he said, his own eyes wet. I just couldn't say it. We talked for hours that night. About Mom, about the choices we'd both made, about the years we'd wasted being angry at each other. I should have been at your graduation, Dad said. That text I sent, that was cruel. Yes, it was, I agreed. But I also used that pain as motivation to prove you wrong. In a strange way, it drove me forward. That doesn't excuse it. No, I said. But I'm learning that people are complicated. You were wrong about a lot of things, but you were also dealing with your own fears and failures. He reached across the table, his hand extended. I looked at it for a moment. Calloused, weathered, the hand that had provided for our family, but also pushed me away. I took it. I'm sorry, he said. For all of it. For not believing in you. For not being there when you needed me. For being too proud to admit when I was wrong. I'm sorry, too, I said, for the way that interview went. I could have handled it differently. No, he shook his head. You were right to hold me accountable. I needed that wake-up call. He squeezed my hand. You became everything I should have been. Strong, ethical, brave enough to do the right thing even when it was hard. We sat there, hands clasped across the table, two people who had spent years hurting each other, finally beginning to heal. Can we start over, he asked. Not forget the past, but maybe move forward? I smiled through my tears. I'd like that. Maybe I could come to your next company event, if you want me there. I'd love that, Dad. That night, after Dad left, I sat at my desk and opened my journal. I had started keeping it during my MBA program, a place to process the stress and challenges. I picked up my pen and wrote, Sometimes revenge looks like success, but healing looks like peace. For years, I thought proving Dad wrong would make me happy, and in some ways, it did. My career success is deeply satisfying, but the real victory isn't in his failure or my triumph. The real victory is in both of us becoming better people. Dad is learning that strength isn't about never admitting mistakes. It's about having the courage to change. I'm learning that justice and compassion aren't opposites. They can coexist. Mom would be proud of both of us, I think. Not for being perfect, but for being willing to grow. My phone buzzed with an email. The subject line read, Speaking invitation. Women in Leadership Conference. I opened it. They wanted me to speak about overcoming obstacles and building a career against the odds. The conference was in 3 months. I accepted immediately. As I prepared my response, I thought about what I would say, about the empty chair at graduation, about the interview, about the long journey from hurt to healing. But mostly I would talk about the power of proving yourself. Not to others, but to yourself. That night, I slept better than I had in months. The conference center was massive, filled with hundreds of women from every industry imaginable. I stood backstage, my prepared speech in hand, my heart racing. You're going to be amazing, Amanda said, squeezing my shoulder. She had taken the day off to support me. The moderator introduced me. Please welcome Claire Weston, Vice President of Operations at Davidson Industries. I walked onto the stage to applause. The lights were bright, the audience a sea of faces. I began my speech, telling my story. The night classes and double shifts. The father who didn't believe in me. The empty chair at graduation. The interview where I had to choose between family loyalty and professional integrity. I spoke about the choices that had defined me. The moments where I had to decide what kind of person I wanted to be. My father didn't attend my graduation, I said, my voice steady. But life made sure he saw what I became. Not through revenge, but through perseverance. Not through anger, but through achievement. I paused, scanning the audience. The question isn't whether people believe in you. The question is whether you believe in yourself enough to keep going when they don't. The crowd began to applaud, building to a standing ovation as I concluded.